Ever felt betrayed by someone you trust? Ever wondered if you could truly forgive a deep hurt? The story of Joseph, a tale from thousands of years ago, holds a powerful key to unlocking this very challenge, and it's more relevant today than ever. Let's dive into this epic journey of jealousy, betrayal, and ultimate redemption. Our story begins with a young man named Joseph. He was his father Jacob's favorite, and Jacob wasn't subtle about it. He gifted Joseph a stunning, multicolored coat. Now, this wasn't just a fashion statement. It was a symbol of his father's special love. For Joseph's 10 older brothers, this coat was a constant, flashy reminder that they weren't the favorite. Adding fuel to the fire, Joseph had these incredible dreams. In one, he saw his brothers' sheaves of wheat bowing down to his. In another, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed to him. He shared these dreams, probably with a bit of youthful naivety, but his brothers heard only arrogance. Their jealousy simmered, then boiled over into a bitter hatred. The coat and the dreams became the catalysts for a devastating act of betrayal. One day, while tending their flocks far from home, the brothers saw Joseph approaching from a distance. "Here comes the dreamer," they sneered. The hatred that had been festering in their hearts erupted into a sinister plan. They grabbed him, stripped him of his precious coat, and threw him into a dry well, leaving him to die. But then a caravan of traders heading to Egypt appeared. One brother, Judah, suggested they sell him instead. That way they wouldn't have his blood on their hands, and they'd make a profit. So for 20 pieces of silver, they sold their own brother into slavery. They then dipped his beautiful coat in goat's blood and presented it to their father, letting him believe his beloved son had been killed by a wild animal. Jacob's grief was inconsolable. Meanwhile, Joseph arrived in Egypt, a slave in a foreign land. But here's where we see the first glimpse of Joseph's incredible character. He was purchased by Potiphar, the captain of Pharaoh's guard. Joseph worked so diligently and with such integrity that God blessed him, and he soon rose to manage Potiphar's entire household. Everything was going well until another trial emerged. Potiphar's wife took notice of Joseph and tried to seduce him. Day after day, he refused, saying, "How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" One day she grabbed him, and he fled, leaving his garment in her hand. Scorned and furious, she used it as false evidence, accusing Joseph of attacking her. Potiphar, enraged, threw Joseph into the royal prison, from the head of a household to the darkness of a dungeon. It seems like Joseph just can't catch a break. But even in prison, his character and his faith shone through. He found favor with the jailer and was soon put in charge of the other prisoners. It was here that his God-given gift for interpreting dreams would resurface. 2 of Pharaoh's officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, were thrown into the same prison. They each had a troubling dream one night. Joseph, seeing their distress, offered to interpret them. He correctly predicted that the cupbearer would be restored to his position in 3 days, while the baker would be executed. Joseph had only one request for the cupbearer. "When all goes well with you, remember me, and mention me to Pharaoh, so he might get me out of this place." But the cupbearer, once freed and restored, forgot. Joseph languished in that prison for 2 more long years. 2 more years of waiting, of trusting, of holding on to hope when it seemed all was lost. Then Pharaoh himself had 2 disturbing dreams that no one in his kingdom could interpret. He dreamed of 7 fat cows being devoured by 7 thin, sickly cows, and then of 7 healthy heads of grain being swallowed by 7 withered heads. Finally, the cupbearer remembered the young Hebrew in prison. Joseph was hastily brought before Pharaoh. He didn't take credit for his ability, instead telling Pharaoh, "It is not in me." God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. He then interpreted the dreams. 7 years of incredible abundance would be followed by 7 years of devastating famine. He didn't just interpret the dreams. He offered a brilliant plan. He advised Pharaoh to appoint a wise and discerning man to oversee the storage of grain during the plentiful years to prepare for the lean years. Pharaoh was so impressed with Joseph's wisdom that he said, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" In a stunning turn of events, Pharaoh appointed Joseph, the former slave and prisoner, as the second in command over all of Egypt. He was given Pharaoh's signet ring, fine robes, and a new name. At 30 years old, Joseph went from the pit to the palace. Just as Joseph had foretold, 7 years of bumper crops were followed by a severe famine that gripped the entire region. The famine was so bad that it reached Joseph's family back in Canaan. Hearing there was grain in Egypt, Jacob sent his 10 sons to buy food. And who did they have to appear before to get this grain? The powerful governor of Egypt, the very brother they had sold into slavery more than 20 years earlier. They bowed down before him, their faces to the ground, unknowingly fulfilling the very dreams that had sparked their jealousy so long ago. Joseph recognized them instantly, but they had no idea who he was. A flood of emotions must have washed over him. But instead of revealing himself or seeking immediate revenge, he decided to test them. He spoke harshly, accused them of being spies, and put them through a series of trials to see if their hearts had changed. He wanted to know if the cruel, jealous men who sold him were still there, or if they had grown into men of conscience and character. He demanded they bring their youngest brother, Benjamin, to prove their story. This terrified them, as they knew their father Jacob would never want to let his last son from his beloved wife Rachel out of his sight, especially after losing Joseph. On their second trip, when they returned with Benjamin, Joseph's test reached its climax. He had his own silver cup planted in Benjamin's sack of grain. When the cup was discovered, Benjamin was accused of theft, and Joseph declared that Benjamin must stay behind as a slave. This was the ultimate test. Would they abandon Benjamin just as they had abandoned him years ago? This is when Judah steps forward, the same Judah who suggested selling Joseph. He makes a passionate, heartfelt plea. He speaks of their father's immense grief and how losing Benjamin would surely kill him. Then he offers himself in Benjamin's place. "Let your servant remain instead of the boy as a slave to my lord," he begs, "and let the boy go back with his brothers." In that moment, Joseph saw it all. The remorse, the change of heart, the selfless love for their brother and their father. The test was over. Overwhelmed with emotion, Joseph could no longer control himself. He sent everyone out of the room except his brothers and broke down, weeping so loudly that the entire Egyptian household could hear. And then he said the words they never expected to hear. "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" His brothers were speechless, terrified. They expected retribution, anger, vengeance. But what they received was grace. Joseph told them, "Do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." He saw the bigger picture. He saw God's sovereign hand weaving a story of salvation even through their sinful act. "You intended to harm me," he later told them, "but God intended it for good." This is the heart of the story. Forgiveness. It wasn't about forgetting what they did. It was about choosing to release the debt, to see a divine purpose beyond the personal pain, and to offer reconciliation instead of revenge. Joseph not only forgave his brothers, but he also provided for them. He brought his entire family, including his aging father Jacob, down to Egypt. He settled them in the best land, Goshen, and nourished them through the rest of the famine. The broken family was reunited, the fractured relationships restored. The son who was cast out became the savior of his family. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that explores timeless wisdom for our modern lives. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, take care